And hello, New Zealand. This is Political Playback. I'm Bob McCoskrie, and off to the far left. The far left is Simon O'Connor. Actually, sorry, no, it's the far right on the screen, isn't it?
That's probably more appropriate, and people go, oh, that makes more sense.
Now, just a quick reminder, if you are watching this on YouTube, we want you to like this video. We want you to like the Family First channel. And if you want to be notified when we go live with any of our programs and you click that notification link, we want to build up our audience on YouTube. So there we go. But if you're watching on Facebook, that's just as good as well. You just go to Family First Facebook page if you want your comments to come through. Nice cup there, Simon. That's excellent. I've got my cup as well. So cheers. Now let's get let's get straight into it. And firstly, I have the image of the week. This was one that I actually tweeted. Breaking: an Iranian sleeper cell has been found in New Zealand Parliament. There we go. The Green Party. It's got a lot of likes there, quite a few views. So Twitter is certainly the place to put some of these amusing things. The video of the week. I've just started doing images and video of the week tonight, Simon, so it's not like it's something we've been regularly doing. It's just that it came up and I really want to play these. For anybody who went through the excruciating process of watching 3 News last night, Stuff's 3 News at 6 o'clock, they would have seen an interview with Winston Peters, which wasn't going too well with the interviewer Samantha Hayes, and this is how it ended.
You can't give me any evidence, but you carry on with the same line of questioning.
Okay, well, we will leave it there, Minister Peters. Thank you so much for your time today.
Well, thank heavens for that.
Have you ever said that at the end of an interview, Simon? Thank heavens for that.
Once the mic is off, yeah, but Winston loves the attention. Look, good on him. Good on him.
Actually, that's a very good question I might just ask you. Winston Peters, speaking of the mic being off, he had a hot mic moment in Parliament yesterday and he was caught calling someone a D-head, a dickhead. Is that an offensive word?
It is. Again, it's potential to bring disorder to the House. So calling people names and so forth, the classic H word, calling someone a hypocrite or a coward. You can argue whether they're offensive or not, but they do cause disorder. And so it was the right that he was called out to apologise.
Okay, I am just going to show this comment early on. It's from Harrison. There we go. Political Playback with Mr. O'Connor and Mr. McCoskrie time. There we are. That's someone who hasn't got a social life, but Harrison, it's good to have you
Harrison,
on board.
I know Harrison well. He's a lovely young man who may or may not, Bob, have been taught by my wife, which is why, amongst many things, he's so polite.
There we go. Edmund says, hi, sir. Thank God you're on there. Is nothing online worth watching. Thank you, sir. Keep cool, walk tall, live long, and rock on. So there we go. We have got a high intellect audience watching tonight, so that's very exciting. Just on a serious note, we do want to just acknowledge the loss of an MP overnight, Te Pāti Māori MP Takatai Tash Kemp, who tragically and very unexpectedly died, and there were appropriate tributes in Parliament. I think, look, even if your politics are different, our humanity is the same, and it's very sad, only 50 years old. Actually, I was thinking, Simon, the Greens had the tragedy with Efeso Collins last year, but then I was thinking back, fortunately, we haven't had too many deaths of sitting MPs.
No, very unusual. I mean, it's very sad. She's been battling, is it diabetes? No. Was it diabetes?
No, it was kidney failure, I think.
Kidney failure, apologies. So been battling that, so immensely sad. She's one of now 2 in this Parliament, so in this 3-year term, who's died. I think it was 2 parliaments before Parakura Horomir from Labour passed away. He was well loved and liked. So it doesn't happen all that often at all. And so as has happened today, the Parliament pays tributes and then as an act of respect shuts down for the day.
Right.
I might also add for the political junkies, this will force a by-election. She had won the Tamaki Makaurau Maori electorate, somewhat controversially,
Yes,
by
very
42
controversial.
votes. Yeah, there's all linked with the Manurewa, marae, and so forth. So there'll be a by-election.
And the Waiparaera Trust. I think that investigation is still ongoing, but that wasn't on her personally, but it was on the whole seat. So theoretically, that seat could flick back to Labor, which is probably it is a Labor seat, and that's going to change the number of MPs in the House. Won't change the left, but it will change the number of MPs. So that's going to be an interesting one.
It will be, but it's a very, very sad, and condolences to her family and friends and her colleagues. They'll be grieving because she was only in the House yesterday. It was in the House debating. I think was asking questions, and then if I read the paper correctly, it was 2 o'clock this morning that she passed away.
Yeah, and I can actually remember the one before that. I think was Norman Kirk, who was Prime Minister at the time. So that was big news. In fact, I can still picture where I was when I heard the news. I think I was about 11. So it was around mid-70s. And yeah, Norman Kirk died while he was Prime Minister. So that was a massive event. I remember sitting with my grandmother in front of the black and white TV watching the live broadcast of the funeral. I don't think you were born then, Simon. So you probably don't even know who I'm talking about. So that is just showing your age. Anyway, let's get into the topics this evening. Don't forget you can comment on our YouTube channel or on our Family First Facebook page. New poll out. There's a couple of graphs I just want to show you, Simon, then I'm interested to get your comment. Firstly, they ask, what are the most important issues facing New Zealanders? Let me just enlarge that a bit. Still the cost things, the cost of living, the economy, but healthcare, that Achilles heel that we've identified, is still up there. Crime, law and order is number 4. Housing, price of housing, so that's an economy one as well. Interesting to note, right down the bottom there is issues facing Māori, despite the fact that the media, and race relations, 1% or 2% above that. So it's interesting. Sometimes what the media are talking about is not what everybody else is thinking about. So that's the concerns based on whether you're left-leaning or right-leaning. Basically, it's showing that actually left and right are both concerned about kind of the economy and health. So that's an interesting one just to note. Also of note, government performance. Now, I did circle in the yellow is Labor in the 3 years before they were booted out. So big drop. And then in the orange circle is National, the current government or the current coalition government. Kind of just holding the line. Certainly not that big drop, is there? But sort of haven't recovered the ground that the Labor government had previously. And then I think the real concern that I'm interested in you commenting on, Simon, is they ask, okay, of all the concerns that you've listed, who do you think is the best one to fix it? Now, in the top 5, Labor have got 3 out of 5. But when you go below the top 5, look at that. Labor is going to solve every problem in New Zealand. Now, either New Zealand voters have amnesia or National is doing really bad. Which is it?
I think it's probably a mixture of both. The Ipsos is one of the well-respected polls, and actually this will be concerning, certainly to the centre-right coalition, certainly to National. Labor will be heartened by it. I can remember a time when the Ipsos polls would be shown to us in caucus and it was awash with red and National was making no traction. That was in our very dark days. And then as we moved towards the last election, National took over and said, yeah, actually people perceive as good that we are actually, or National was the party. So the fact that it's going back to red is a worry. There's a multitude of reasons in some way and in no particular order. You touched on media. They're unrelentingly attacking the government. There's no grace. There's no positives.
No.
Secondly, National, they haven't resonated, or certainly the senior leadership hasn't resonated, and I don't think people are feeling any better than they were. So there's some problems there. And the other is, and I think it's a deliberate strategy by Chris Hipkins and Labor. He's lying low. I think it's quite deliberate that you're not hearing from him a lot. They're trying to lower his profile and just sort of let that latent frustration with the current coalition boil away. And arguably, final point here, the poll is showing that that's working.
I mean, the government was changed only we're only halfway through the term, 18 months ago, and we had significant problems in all these areas. I mean, for people to say that Labor can solve the healthcare hospitals issue when some would argue that it was all their tinkering around and getting rid of DHBs that caused the problem. They've got housing there. Remember Kiwi Build and that massive building program that Labor promised and never did? I mean, that's the reason I said about amnesia. I mean, is it always that the grass is greener on the other side?
I don't think it always is. I think part of it is a general emotive reaction, and that the left is better at spending money. And so I suspect, and again, it's only speculating, that a lot of people go, look, if we need to fix the health system or we need to do more in education or more of anything, you want the left wing in because they spend money. And so they're not thinking about how Labor, Greens and others have acted in the past. And I think part of it too is National is having trouble, as is the coalition, of selling its message. I think it's one of the reasons why with that first graphic, you're seeing that the line hasn't moved up. People have voted in for change. They were hoping for probably unrealistically amazing quick turnarounds, but instead it just sort of feels somewhat more of the same for a lot of people, particularly in the economic space. And I think they're getting frustrated. But I would just underline, I think it's probably an emotional response. People aren't thinking and reasoning it through. As you say, Bob, basically the left bloc are the same people who've caused all the problems that have led us to date, but people are not thinking in that way. They're just emotionally responding to effectively a frustration with politics at the moment.
Well, I think the left is even worse because we're seeing some real radical stuff coming out of both the Greens and Te Pāti Māori, and I think that's going to be the marketing point for National if they want to get back in, is to just say, hey, look at the alternative. But well, Ipsos suggests that people aren't looking at the alternative just yet. Now, look, there was this article today, and I just need you to explain here. So the government has been forced to release basically Treasury papers, official papers, saying that, well, you may need to cut health and education, but of course New Zealanders are crying out for more investment in health and education. So is the government caught between a rock and a hard place in all of this?
Oh, very much so. I mean, what Treasury is saying here, this is very normal for them. They are always projecting decisions into the future. And what they're saying is if the government continues its spending trajectory, in this case in health, but it applies just about anywhere, basically we're not going to have the money. It's just not affordable. And Treasury is saying, look, you're going to either have to cut spending, you're going to have to increase taxes, and you most certainly need to increase the age of superannuation. Because viewers might remember from a few weeks back when we covered the budget, the slice of the pie, the slice of the government spend, which is superannuation, is large and it's getting larger. So, yep, the government's in a rock and a hard place. All I would say, the current government needs to address this. And, it's my own view, Bob, that that's primarily done by raising superannuation and by deeper spending cuts. I know that's a hard message for people to hear, but the government's actually spending more. And the longer they delay, it doesn't matter who's in government, the blue team or the red team, the longer they keep kicking the can of spending and the superannuation age down the road, the worse that this is going to get.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to our second topic. And, there was a bill that was approved past the third reading. And the scary part is that we're back to a children's commissioner after, interestingly, Labor got rid of it. And it's usually the lefties who love the children's commissioner because generally the children's commissioner is a lefty. Think Cindy Kiro. To be honest, I have a bad relationship with children's commissioners because they have always encouraged. Well, they promoted the anti-smacking law. They've said that we shouldn't be punishing kids who were tagging. They're basically all about children's rights, and I think that's been part of the problem, and we're seeing the fruit of that, telling kids they have rights over responsibilities by their behaviour and truancy and taking weapons to school, which we've seen a big increase over the last couple of years. So, I'm interested just to ask you as an ex-politician, I was fascinated that Labor got rid of the Children's Commissioner because the Children's Commissioner was kind of always batting on the left side of politics. And now it's National who has brought it back. And the Children's Commissioner is kind of like a quasi voice of the UN. So what's national thinking here?
I'm really not sure. When you put the story on my radar, I was like, what? Really? As you say, I think part of the problem is commissioners have a very narrow focus. So, using this one, all they are is focused on children and then voicing for the children, ignoring the wider reality, such as, parents teaching children that taking knives to school is not a good thing. And you can imagine where any future commissioner might go. I mean, some optimistically might think a more sensible headed person would be appointed into that role. I'm not optimistic. My real take of it's optics. Oranga Tamariki is a mess. People who work within it will tell you that. It's got major problems. So I think this looks good, or that's how the government wants to perceive it. Oh, we are doing something. We've got someone involved. But speaking personally, I've got little time for all these commissioners. It's sort of creating another parallel bureaucracy alongside elected officials. And it's no offense to some of the commissioners that I know personally, but we've got grocery commissioners, we've got commissioners for human rights, we've got commissioners for race, we've got commissioners for children. It goes on and on and on and on and on. And again, they become quite, I'm going to use this word, fundamentalist. And what I mean again by that is they are singularly focused on their area. And, there's positives in that, but generally it ignores the wider dynamics in play in society.
Okay, we've got a ministry for women as well, but we still haven't been able to define it. So that's an interesting one. All right. Look, I think just on this topic, the ACT Party have initiated a social media inquiry. So this is all around banning social media to under 16-year-olds. So the government private members bill from, what was your colleague's name?
Catherine Wedd.
Catherine, thank you. And private members bill, and then the Prime Minister chirps in and says, actually, no, we're going to make this kind of a government focus, and we're going to get the Minister of Education on it to look through it. And now, next minute, ACT put out a media release yesterday, and I did a little bit of a Google, Simon. Media have totally ignored this, which is kind of interesting because normally they would be all over this issue, but maybe it's because ACT have released it. But ACT have got this social media inquiry. So they've got a select committee inquiry, and they say it is an ACT-initiated inquiry, gives MPs the chance to listen to parents, educators, experts and social media companies before jumping to conclusion, which kind of like is a knife in the back of their coalition partner, National. So the optics to me is very, very interesting. Am I right to be curious about all of this, or is this just typical politicking?
Oh, no, I think you're right to be curious. I think there's some positive moves. In fact, I was struck how the media actually did engage the topic early on around under 16s. Again, it was sort of a new, I don't know, what's the right word, popular little group that popped up and Luxon rode along with it. And that's good, by the way. I just think the irony of you've been talking and promoting this for years, and they didn't call, but that's the media for you. But they've gone off the boil. I think that's a very astute observation. They're just not talking about this anymore. And I think ACT opposed the idea of a bill at the time. I think they deployed sort of an agree to disagree with their governing colleagues and said, look, we think it is better, as they're now announcing, this select committee process. And there's some merit in that. Have a discussion. I would argue, Bob, that actually putting a bill in and having it debated and go through select committee will achieve the same thing. But I think ultimately ACT has sort of leapfrogged the government here. It's taking the initiative, or being seen to take the initiative, as National, in this case, the ministers go a bit quiet on it. Yeah.
Okay, there have been a couple of polls. One is the Radio New Zealand one, and for the social media ban. Now, this is last month or beginning of this month, I think it was. So quite strong support, almost 60% and 32%. And then, of course, there was our poll where we actually asked the same question 2 years in a row, so we were able to get a trend. The orange is the oppose, so the opposition has gone down, and the green is support, so it's gone up. and it's around the 60% mark as well. Now, interestingly enough, and here's a bit of gratuitous advertising for you, Simon, you've actually done a very good Family Matters interview on this. Tell us about it.
My first impression is I don't seem to have changed clothes for a couple of months. Long and short, Melissa Mackay heads up the Digital Childhood Alliance. She's a mum in Utah, if I recall correctly. I know she's a mum, I think it's Utah. But long and short, she's led the campaign there in Utah and now across the United States to put the focus actually on the App Store side of things. So instead of trying to ban social media, so everything from YouTube to Facebook to Instagram, everyone running about trying to age verify, she came up with the idea, well, why don't we just target the app stores? There's really only two of them, Google Play and the Apple Store, which you already have to provide details for. So long and short, she's facilitated the passing of laws in the likes of Utah, Texas, and I think Florida now, where basically you've got to not only consent but prove your age at the App Store, so you don't get to download. So she was an amazing person to talk to. I mean, obviously I would, but I encourage people to jump onto the Family First YouTube or website and listen to her. And I've sent it actually to the minister and to Catherine, encouraging them to listen, because actually they could learn a thing or two.
Yep, and once again, some gratuitous advertising. We're now making it easier if you prefer not to watch Simon's suit. You can just read the transcript of the interview. Have you done the transcript for this one? This is the one you have, eh?
I haven't yet.
To do?
I haven't yet. It's on to do. We'll go back. We'll go back through all of them.
Yeah. Okay. So go to our website and check out that Family Matters interview. And we are starting to add scripts so that if you'd prefer just to read the script, which is something that sometimes I do rather than watching the interview, but the interview is a great watch as well. So do both. So that's that one. Actually, there was an article in the New Zealand Herald about Australia, because in December, social media is going to be banned for under 16. And of course, they're trying to figure out how do they do the age verification. They've commissioned 52 companies or something to offer solutions, because the legislation in Australia says that the government can't be involved in the age verification. So that gets around the whole state intervention, the concerns around that. But what's interesting is that groups like Apple have actually been making some changes. And there was a worldwide developers conference just recently where they've got new features where they can identify actual nudity on social media and fuzz that out. They've also changing 3 age ratings, 13 plus, 16 plus, 18 plus. And there's also other age-appropriate protections. See, this is where I think the solution is, Simon. It's always been my argument, is we've allowed these social media companies and the app stores, the Wild West. We already know that they've been exploiting through the feeds and targeting kids. And it's about time that we told them they need to show some responsibility. So I think it's a good discussion, and Apple seem to be responding to it.
Yeah, I think they're sensing a change. It's obviously not just the United States. You mentioned Australia and New Zealand's talking about. There is building pressure, and these guys aren't completely stupid, and so they're going, look, this is the way the wind's blowing, and we need to start developing. And, I'm no expert, but when I play around with AI these days, I mean, I think about my own phone with all the photos on it. It's amazing now what I can type in, Christmas, chickens. I know that sounds really basic, but if you put it in and it finds it, somehow the AI detects what is and is not in my photos. Yeah. So working out exploitative imagery, pornographic imagery, it to me, it strikes me as no different. So the technology is there, the pressure's coming. But again, that Melissa's idea, I think, using the choke point of the app stores is very, very smart, and personally something I think the government should be investigating here.
Yep. Okay, because you said chicken and Christmas in the same sentence, you're now going to start finding ads appearing on your feed talking about Christmas turkeys and stuff like that. Sunny Side Up makes a very good point. Bob's not paying Simon enough to buy new clothes. So there we are. Well said. All right, let's get into our next topic. And look, just totally sort of around politics, because this is where we get our politics from, is the way the media are reporting them. And the question is, who's watching what? Simon, little poll here, and maybe if you are watching, you can tell us which one you watch. Oh, look at that. That's impressive, eh? Took me ages to figure out how to do that. So do you watch One News or do you watch 3 News, or would you rather have a root canal? And Simon, I'm interested to know which is your preference?
I'll caveat with I barely ever watch the news anymore. But when I do, which might be once every month, I'd watch TV1.
Once a month?
Yeah, I very rarely watch it live. I pick things up on X and Facebook, and I can jump onto websites and pull out particular articles. But no, quite genuinely, I don't put it on and watch it. It bores me.
Well, I watch it purely for research, but I always watch it delayed so that I can fast forward through the stuff, especially live feeds from certain correspondents in certain countries. So I do watch both, but I do find that the presenters on 3 News are just so condescending and sarky that it really does wind my blood pressure up. Anyway, here's the latest stats, and because the interesting thing was that during a recent interview that David Seymour did with John Campbell, the head of One News said, "Oh, look, 1 million people are watching One News," and David Seymour questioned that. As you can see there, it's around the 650 mark. I mean, I'd still be concerned. That's kind of a little bit of a downward drag, but that's people who are watching the whole program, I think. It doesn't include those who may watch parts of it. So I'm not included in these stats because I only watch as much as I can handle. 3 News stuff, is it worth continuing that? Both of them seem to be slightly decreasing. And so there we go. If you are going to watch one, more people are watching One News, Simon, and I don't know if that's a good thing. But anyway, just speaking of the David Seymour. Oh, go on.
I was just going to say, I'm with you. It's that condescending. That's why I say it bores me. I don't need to be told what to think.
What to think.
And I suspect, a bit like yourself and a number of others, I mean, I'm getting my news. I'll jump onto their websites and draw out what I need to have. But to sit for 15, 30, 60 minutes to be lectured, it's just... And also, it's not the modern... You touched on it yourself, Bob. You record it and then use the fast forward function. I mean, most of us can get this now with the +1 channels or recorded. We get things by streaming. It'd be interesting, last comment, it would be interesting, I don't know if we could do it, to correlate age of watchers, because I can't help but think you just got a core set of supporters for both TV3 and One, which is why it sort of holds. It is slightly declining, as you say, but it just sort of holds. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's that cadre of older New Zealanders.
Yeah, no, look, if you look at the under 30s, I think it is, it's really dire. They are really concerned about that. So I think that's why they're trying to maybe do it on TikTok and Facebook, although they've all cried their way off Twitter because, they're upset. They've been triggered by Twitter. Because I advertise Family Matters, I do just want to advertise a McBlog. And it's just because lots of people did watch this particular one, and it's just where we reviewed. So David Seymour turned up to an interview with John Campbell, but he brought his own camera crew who filmed the whole interview, including the lead-in and some of the discussion. And as a result, TVNZ realised that they needed to publish the whole interview, which they don't normally. Usually it's, okay, let's start, let's finish, but it's all the lead-in, all the discussion beforehand. It's very interesting. And look, it's an interesting trend. I'm just interested to know, Simon, when you were having interviews, did you sort of have a backup? I mean, I always see when politicians are having interviews that someone is standing over their shoulder, one of their staff is recording the whole interview, so you can say, well, actually, media, you did a sound bite, but that's not what I said in context. Were you always watching your back on that one?
Not always. So there were certainly times, and always let the journalist or the reporter know that I was recording. You just put your phone on. I wouldn't have someone having it over my shoulder. It might just be in my hand or in my suit jacket. But not all and every time. Again, so much of it comes down to who's interviewing you and on what topic, you know. So if someone was asking me as the Shadow Minister for Customs my view on a drug haul, I'm not going to worry about that. If they were chasing me down on a matter of leadership or an ethical question, definitely would record it, because you know you want to be able to go back to the editor or the producers and say, hey, your reporter said I said this. There was an awkward sentence. Um, and actually, this is what I did say. So you do need it as a backup. Look, kudos to David Seymour actually just ratcheting the pressure up on them. I mean, it's a stunt, but actually there's an underlying point to it. It's trying to hold journalists to account. And you know yourself, Bob, I'm sure from your experience, you've been interviewed, and the reporter goes and says, in effect, the complete opposite of what you were saying, or cherry picks elements of what you shared.
Yeah. Look, I have seen how easy it is, because we've produced a lot of documentaries over our time. And so basically I interview, I get the full transcript, and then we try to draw it down to a shorter interview. So sometimes you can have talked for 90 minutes and somehow you've got to get something watchable for 20, 25 minutes. I know how easy it is to completely distort what a person is saying, and you can totally twist their words and make them look like an utter fool. Fortunately, the people we work with, we're working with them, so it's not that kind of gotcha interview. But, oh, yeah, it is very easy to do. And, of course, we saw that, what was that interview that they did with Kamala Harris in the presidential election? Was it 60 Minutes, where they literally were changing her answers to make her look better? I think Trump has actually sued them, and I think there's been a whole lot of heads have been rolled, and, there's a major worry with that. So it's been a real wake-up call for the whole industry, hasn't there?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I hadn't even thought of the Kamala Harris one. Exactly right. I mean, she stumbled and faffed her way through the interview, but the way they cut it made her look very clear and decisive, which she was not. But yeah, you've talked yourself. I'm not going to give particular examples. I don't want to bore people, but there's certainly been times where I've, you know, talked to a journalist and they've literally clipped certain words. And again, it either makes you look incompetent or a slight difference in your meaning. And yeah, there's a lot of mischief to be had. And to link it back to your earlier thing around social media and AI, just think of the challenges coming down the pipeline for us as a society to understand what is true and correct is going to become more challenging.
Yeah. Okay, Rosie said if I had the choice between watching the mainstream media or watching a hip replacement surgery, I'd watch the hip replacement surgery. Edmund says, my parents are in the 70s and they believe the news 100%. Nancy Margaret says, scares me, Simon. I'm older and I don't watch 1 or 3 news. They are so biased. And Dee Dee says that David is thinking outside the square. I think, he's probably just sick of being misrepresented. Anyway, have a watch of that McBlog while you're watching The Family Matters, which are both available on familyfirst.nz. All right, I got an email yesterday from Hobson's Pledge, Simon, and they said that, well, they were having a go at the Minister of Education, Erica Stanford, National's wokest minister, because they said, and let me just show you. So this is section 127 of the Education and Training Amendment Bill, number 2. So this is the existing law, and it sort of says that, objectives of boards in governing schools, and there's a bit of a section there on Māori, which seems fairly benign, just the culture. So everything's physically safe, inclusive, the usual stuff. The Māori primary objective is getting through the curriculum and hopefully teaching and learning and not polluting kids with confusing gender and sexuality ideology. Anyway, next minute, there is a amendment which Hobson's Pledge is very concerned about. It's got that same kind of section about the Treaty of Waitangi, but this is the bit that they, right up the top there, it says paramount objective of boards. So just to show you, previously it was objective of boards. Now it's paramount objective of boards. Now, from my commercial law background, the word paramount is paramount. It means that it is the first and foremost. What's it mean from a political thing? And are Hobson's Pledge right to be calling out Erica Stanford on this?
I think they're certainly doing it in a very provocative way, which is their means.
Modus
I think
operandi. Yep.
it is. It is. And I suppose it's the nature of lobby groups. You've got to really sort of scream loudly. No, I think they are right in terms of drawing attention to that paramount side of things. So, they're right from their viewpoint. I suspect the minister will say, look, there's no wording changes to what the objectives are. They've been in the previous law. We're not changing them into the current one. But where the politics get interesting, as I say, is twofold. One is calling them now paramount objectives, which means, as I read it, every board of every school in the country will need to do something to address this. And as I read it too, so it's prioritising tikanga, mataranga Māori, te ao Māori views, and of course te reo. And look, there's a place for that. Some schools will really want it, but now all schools, as a paramount objective, are going to have to figure out not only having, let's say, a tikanga course, but it's got to get into every subject. So ponder doing, I don't know, science, and also now having to, as a paramount objective, incorporate mataranga in. It's a recipe for problems. And the second is that you can see how a lot of boards will run with this. Some schools, we absolutely want this. And more often than not, Bob, the left, the progressives, use the cloak of the treaty to sort of be the vanguard or the thing that pushes the door open for them to do and discuss all sorts of issues that our kids don't need to hear. So I think there are problems here, making it paramount. And the final point, of course, the coalition agreements, as far as I understand them, say that these things are meant to be taken out. Not being, they're not being put in, but it's been really amplified. So there is something here, but I can't presume to be a complete expert in it. But paramount means paramount.
Yeah. Well, Stanford sneaky sellout. I mean, there's a lot of alliteration going on there, so it sort of rolls off the tongue. But, I mean, is it being sneaky, or is this legislators or government, public service, Ministry of Education maybe have inserted that word? But words can have a lot of meaning. I mean, this was the whole argument about relationship, sexuality, education, is that they sneakily included it so that it was being included in all subjects, so that you couldn't remove your child if you didn't want your child included in sex education. So it was very sneaky. So is this another sneaky approach?
Look, I think it is, whether it was deliberately done. So, I mean, it's possible I'm not in the mind of the minister that she thought it really doesn't make a big difference. I think it does. If something's an objective, you can choose whether to pursue that or not to a degree. But now this makes it much, much more serious. As I say, certain groups and activists will take that and run a mile. And the other thing that just crosses my mind is you're going to end up with an enormous amount of graft. And what I mean by that is taxpayer money going to cultural consultants, as every board in every school needs now to go out and find people to give them advice on this. So it's going to be another transfer of taxpayer money, which, to be completely blunt, as a step parent, granted they're all older now, bar the foster child, is that ultimately I'd prefer the money to go on to books and stationery than that. But that's my personal view.
Okay. I just think having that in the heading, paramount objective, as opposed to the previous, just objective, paramount objective, it could be just semantics. It's just, you got to ask, why add that specific word? So, okay, we will monitor that one. Justine says, I'm in my 70s. I don't watch the news. I only watch Family First. So there we go, Justine. Top of the class. Thank you very much. Good to have you on board. Right, let's move on. And what's the next topic? Foreign affairs. Okay, so Luxon has had, he's had 2 trips. So we've got this one where he went to China first, and it was all handshakes and everything going well. And then there was this when he went to NATO. Now, is the boss of NATO really tall, or is Luxon really short? Because that kind of looks funny, doesn't it? It's just a funny photo. But anyway, we won't get personal, because I've looked funny in photos when a recent photo standing next to the coach of the All Blacks and everybody asked if I'd shrunk in the wash. So anyway, it's just one of those things. But tell us, Simon, how would you rate what Luxon has been doing? I think I heard Chloe Schwarbrick from the Greens say that basically Luxon is just on a jaunt around the world at the moment, or fluffing around. There was some derogatory statement. And yet, from what I can tell, whether you agree with some of the decisions he's been making, he has been shaking hands and hobnobbing with some pretty senior world leaders. That's got to be a good thing, doesn't it?
Oh, look, it is a good thing. I mean, I've got queries around how effective New Zealand's messaging has been, both in terms around China and NATO, and New Zealand's inability to say anything about the Israel-Iran conflict. But in terms of Luxon representing New Zealand and being at these events, there is a positive there. So it's a classic attack from any opposition to say, oh, it's just a junket, but actually pressing the flesh, being there. With NATO, for example, we're not part of NATO. I mean, everyone should know that. But a year or so ago, they set up something called IP4, or Indo-Pacific 4. So that's South Korea, Japan, Australia, New Zealand. Christopher was the only prime minister from that group to go. Probably doesn't put the IP4 in a great position for NATO, not because of Christopher, but the other countries didn't bother sending anyone senior. But he'll get kudos for being there, talking. He didn't get to meet Trump, but that's possibly a good thing. I don't think Trump would have much time for his prevarication on foreign affairs issues and not supporting them in Iran. That's one of the big risks actually here. Trump is unpredictable and he loves throwing tariffs around. So New Zealand, be it Winston or Luxon, they've got to be very careful in this space.
Were you concerned about kind of the fluffy response to America's bombing of nuclear facilities in Iran? I mean, I'm not quite sure who was fluffier, whether it was Albanese in Australia or Luxon in New Zealand. It just seemed very wet and weak, but maybe that's because I personally supported what the states in Iran did. I think there was a genuine threat there. Yeah,
look, I've laid my cards on the table. I think action had to be taken. We've been trying diplomacy for years and years and years. In fact, decades. And the idea from Helen Clark and others that we just have some more conversations is going to make a difference, I think is naive in the extreme. I thought New Zealand's response was weak. Albanese eventually came around and said actually he supported the strikes. But I just think in a couple of cases now, New Zealand, it's as a friend put to me, we no longer seem to be able to work out who the good guy and the bad guy is. And it's not trying to reduce things just to a simple binary, but I think it illustrates the point. You have a liberal democratic country, in this case Israel, along with the US, and you have an autocratic theocratic regime of lunatic religious zealots building nuclear weapons.
And funding terrorism.
Difficult. Exactly. So, even in just to finalize on this point, the Americans and Trump notice these things. So as we continue to seek free trade, as we try to deal with the Americans, not a good look for the government, whether it's been voiced by Luxon or Winston or anyone, that we're not showing support. They'll come with consequences.
Okay, important notification. I just noticed that your wife is watching, so sharpen your act up, okay, buddy? And also we've got a good comment from Dee Dee, prevarication, word of the week. I don't even know what it means. What's it mean, Simon?
To prevaricate is to go slow, to be uncertain about something. And so not choosing sides, not really having an opinion, trying to avoid saying anything. That's prevaricating.
Okay, who needs Bruce Logan when we've got Simon O'Connor? There we go. Don't need the Roger Thesaurus. All right, we are doing fantastic. We've got one more topic to cover today. And look, it's just a very interesting one around the media again. And it comes from the fact that I have prepared a McBlog, which will be released in a couple of days. And I forced myself to watch a little bit of this, which everybody's probably seen lots of advertising for, funded by New Zealand On Air to the tune of over $500,000. There's also one on Māori TV, which also got over $500,000. So apparently we need to be told that they're here. I mean, nobody knew that LGBT was here So they've had to do an education campaign. But I just want to show you a little extract. There's a fascinating admission made by our good friend Chanel Lal about the conversion therapy law. Now, at the time, Labor was the majority government, so Jacinda was the Prime Minister, and Labor weren't moving fast enough. And I want you to listen to what the solution was from the campaigners.
The Labour Party simply would not commit to banning conversion therapy leading up to the election, and so we convinced the media to hound them, and we did very well.
Let me show you that again.
The Labour Party simply would not commit to banning conversion therapy leading up to the election, and so we convinced the media to hound them, and we did very well.
Who needs a political party when you got the media to campaign on your behalf? I thought it was an incredible admission. I'm not sure that he meant to say that out loud, and to be honest, it's not a surprise to me, but quite an amazing thing that he said the quiet part out loud.
Yeah, very much so. There's probably a little bit of regret in that, but I think for all of us, and been a bit presumptuous here, but most viewers and listeners will know that the media, and it's one of the things we keep coming back to, the media are advocates for particular moral positions on different topics. You found that during the cannabis debate, which fortunately and successfully you and the Family First team won, but the media takes stances on particular topics, so it doesn't matter if it's conversion therapy, LGBTI rights, euthanasia, abortion, cannabis, and then they promote their view and as best they can ignore the others. And when you think of conversion therapy, the way it was reported was a complete and utter beat up, with most people not actually understanding what was going on and what it was seeking to do, which fundamentally, as you and I know, is just another way to try and silence any ability for people to have a rational conversation around these things.
Yep. Okay. So anyway, watch for that episode to full. I do a little analysis of a particular episode of that. There's a couple of other revealing statements made by one of your ex-colleagues, Louisa Wall, as well. So you'll be interested to see that. All right, just a couple of comments before we wrap it up for tonight. We've done fantastic tonight. Murray, actually, I'm interested on you just commenting on two of these because I saw these just come through. Murray says Luxon doesn't want to upset any potential voters, but while he's doing this, he upsets everyone. I think you might have touched on that. And Alpha Crucis says Luxon's anti-Semitic. Now, I don't agree with that. I don't think he's anti-Semitic. I think it goes back to the original statement by Murray that he doesn't want to upset any potential voters. What say you?
Yeah, I would not describe Luxon anti-Semitic. I don't see any evidence of that. That's a label you could rightly and properly throw at the Greens as per your first image of today's show as they run around in costume dress pretending to be terrorists. But yeah, exactly. That's not just that photo, I better be clear, but their statements and behaviours very much anti-Semitic. But it's not for Luxon. But no, Murray, I would completely agree with. And I think it's part of the reason why Luxon is struggling in favourability. I think it's part of the reason why the government's struggling. It's that optics that I keep talking about, that people just don't know where he stands, and they actually don't know where the party stands. So, you talked earlier, or we talked earlier, about the treaty clauses. The government's talked big that they're going to be removing this. And yet here they are being strengthened, and people go, what? And so it's only one example, but there's that confusion. And then, as we say with the foreign affairs stuff, instead of taking a clear position, it's waffle words. And, listening to, was it Winston in the House last week? He spoke for a long time, but I had no idea what he was saying. It was just no position. And I think people pick up on that. So yeah, Murray's right.
Yeah, no, I think there is a frustration about when people don't answer the questions clearly and waffle around. I think I read a report by a News Talk ZB host, Heather Duplessis Allen, was interviewed, where she just won the Sir Paul Holmes Broadcasters Award. Congratulations to her. That's a great honour. And she said, look, she really, Jacinda wanted nothing to do with being interviewed by her because Heather said look, I just get straight into the questions. And if politicians don't answer, I keep hankering them until I get the answer. People are sick of the waffle, and they know when politicians are playing political games with answers. And so I think that's right, Simon. I think that's where Luxon's greatest challenge is. I think, look, even if you don't like Trump, he says exactly what he's thinking, even if it's the F-bomb. And people have no doubt about where he stands on things, and people see that and they kind of like it. Even if they don't like what he's saying, they kind of like the fact that they know where he stands. Part of the problem is people aren't quite sure where Luxon stands because he's trying to drive this middle line, isn't he?
Look, that's exactly it. So you've absolutely nailed it along with Murray. And trying to please everyone, you please no one. And again, people just don't quite know, and therefore they don't really believe. I mean, I found in my political career, you just be straight up with people, including on the really tough issues. And yet some people will just be very angry that you don't agree with them or you have a different position. But a lot of people would be appreciative that you were honest, or in this case, myself was honest to say, no, this is my view on this topic. And they go, oh, okay, well, I don't like that you disagree with me, but I appreciate that you've been upfront. And I think, to be fair, Helen Clark, John Key were probably more in that space. You couldn't really accuse someone like Helen of being unclear of what she thinks on things. And I think, again, it's part of what Luxon's struggling with. But you also do, to be fair to him, you've got a media that look for every chance to put the boot in. So that's a challenge too. That's one
thing that I actually give credit to the Greens and even to Pāti Māori, is that, look, even if you disagree with them and even if you think they're whack, they stick to their guns. They don't try and mollycoddle or soften what they're saying. They say it exactly as they believe it. Now, we would disagree with their political stance on just about everything, but you know where they stand. They're not trying to give a politically correct answer. I think our side needs to do that a little bit more.
Yeah, I think the yes is the short answer, and that's why you can sit. I remember talking about this in caucus quite frequently, or collectively. We can sit there and moan about things, or you can go, right, what do we do to change it? And if the messaging that a government or a political party is saying is not resonating, then you can sit there and complain about the voters. But as I've said before, the voters are always right. And so, the political party, the Prime Minister of the day, the government of the day needs to change its approach. And, the election's now less than 18 months away. Yep.
As Rosie says, nice way to wrap it up. You can please some of the people all of the time. You can please all of the people some of the time, but you can't please all of the people all of the time. And that's a very applicable quote. Look, lots of you watching. We haven't got to all of your comments. We appreciate you. Lots on Facebook. A lot of people watching on X, on Twitter. So nice to have you on board. Also on LinkedIn. And look, just a reminder, if you are watching on YouTube, we're building our channel. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to our channel. And if you want the notifications when we come live, then please do come on board. Anyway, we're out of time. Simon, are you on cooking tonight? Shall I text your wife? Or because I'm always fascinated as to who's the chef in your house.
My foster daughter is playing netball at the moment, which then is interesting because Rachel is there with her. I hope if Rachel's been watching this, she's also watching the netball. So it's her. It was half time. So it is. So long and short, we've just Rachel's made some homemade pizza tonight because we're all a bit tired and stuffed. So that's that's so. What about you? Or is that a silly question?
Look, if it can be barbecued, I'll be cooking. If it can't be barbecued, then I'll be grateful to my lovely wife for a beautiful dinner. There we are. There's a suck up, wasn't it? Okay.
It was, but well played. By the way, you should remind people that you've just done your 500th McBlog.
Yeah, I don't know how that sneaked up. Look, I was monitoring you because you were celebrating a recent anniversary of Solid Ground, which was impressive. And I thought, I must have a check and see how many McBlogs I've done, and it was on 4.99. So there we are, 500 McBlogs, and it's quite fascinating, but lovely to have the audience which are watching all of our programs, isn't it, Simon? So good to know that somebody's listening to us, even if our wives aren't.
No comment.
Okay, team, we are out of time. Have a great night, and we'll be back next Thursday night with Political Playback. Until then, have a great day.